So let's jump into kind of what we wanted to really jump into in much more detail today based on current events. Dave's step 4 is to start investing, 15% because you've got all your debts paid off, maybe minus your house. I think that's his caveat, is you can save the house for later because that's step 6.
I think that's 6, yeah.
Yep. But if you've got all that, you've got a bunch of emergency fund, and we would maybe suggest going beyond that into more of the opportunity fund. Then let's start putting money away for our future. Let's start growing the money. And of course, Dave, his particular vehicles are mutual funds that, he promotes through his show. And he talks about index funds, I believe, and there's a lot of different ways that you can invest in the market, right? There's a lot of different ways to do that. Now, the 15% number, I'm not sure exactly where he arrives at why 15%. There could be a lot of, you can reference the scriptures and they say to tithe 10% and save 10%. So that might be part of where he's coming up with that. But I think this is kind of a unique number for everybody, that depends on where you're at. What are your goals? How much cash flow do you have? What type of, employment or business do you have? That number might be different for people. I mean, we hear of some of the more wealthy people that, maybe influencers on, social media, that they're sometimes investing 30% of their income or even more than that, living on a very small percentage of what the cash flow their businesses generate and investing the rest because they have that wealthy mindset. It's the delayed gratification. It's thinking long term and thinking, how can I put my money to work today, not spending it, putting it to work so it can, be a multiple down the road in a decade that, 100,000 could turn into 10 million. I mean, that's the way a lot of the real estate investors look at it, is I can do without some of the toys for now, and then I can really go up some financial levels, after a decade or two because I've been investing more. So that 15%, I think that's a customized number. You got to be working with a financial person that you trust and come up with a plan in that number. But I think investing in general is great, but then it's kind of like we just talked about with saving and the emergency fund. Like, where are we saving? Well, I think we should be asking the same thing about investing. Where are we investing and why are we investing there? Are most of the people I talk to, Matt, they just do it because that's the only thing they ever have heard. Just throw your 401k. That's about it. They might have some diversification, if you want to call it that, into a mutual fund or an index fund or an ETF. But I mean, most people, they invest in the market, because that's all they know. But there's other things you can invest in. You can invest in yourself. We've done a lot of content on that in the past, of the power of investing in yourself. And that can sometimes have a much greater return. I know for me, it certainly has. I haven't found a product that's done as much as what I've been able to do in my own life to scale my income, because I've learned skill sets, I've developed networks, I've increased my knowledge and experience, a lot of times through failure. But all those things can sometimes add up. So, investing doesn't always have to be just throwing money at the market, because that's what we're taught to do, and that's the main narrative out there. I love what Garrett talks about with his investor DNA, is figuring out, getting a deeper look into yourself and what makes you tick and how you think and what your beliefs are and what your values are around money. And am I investing in a way that is in alignment with those things? Am I investing in a way that fuels me? Am I investing in a way that is in alignment with my purpose and my passion and the way I want to serve other people? Because if you're investing with counter intentions or, confusion, because sometimes people don't even understand how the markets function. They're just doing it blindly because that's what somebody told them to do. And that can lead to some disconnect, and that can show up in other areas of your life if you're just living a life out of balance. And so those are some things that I like to think about. And, even the whole idea of, like, have you even asked how much money am I investing? How much of it do I want to be in the market? Do I want some safer investments? Do I want to, be 50-50. I was on a call last night with a 50-year-old husband and wife, and I was asking them that question. And when I asked them, they just kind of went blank. Like, I don't know. I've never even thought about that. Never even occurred to them, like, how much is the amount that I have tied to the market, the amount that I'm in alignment with? They didn't even know the answer to that. And so we worked through that, and we're going to have to talk more about it next week when I have our second appointment, because they've just never thought about that, to know, like, how much do I want safe, and what are some safe investments? I don't even know. What are safe ways to grow my money? They were completely clueless in that. So those are the questions that, you need to begin being educated about, so that you know what and why you're doing what you're doing, not just following a guru, not just following what everybody does at the office, but you're doing things with intention and with purpose. They're in alignment with what you're here to do. I think that is such a critical part. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on the investment. I know you had a great post today on Facebook that I liked a lot, and share some thoughts around what your perspective is here with current events.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so again, I like the order of the baby step, but this is where I really start to push back against Dave Ramsey. Again, like the stuff that he teaches with regards to building long-term wealth, it's all about just playing it safe, relying on Wall Street and the stock market to build all this wealth for you. When you're 65, maybe 70 years old, you'll finally be able to live the life that you want. When he says that these mutual funds are going to do 12% every year, so you can actually withdraw 8% every year once you're in retirement. I mean, just horrible, absolutely horrible advice. I don't even know how he gets away with it sometimes. It's crazy, some of the stuff that he throws out there. Now, here's the thing. There's nothing necessarily wrong with investing in the stock market, okay? I am personally not a fan of the market. I have $0 invested in the stock market because it doesn't match what you mentioned earlier, Jeff, my investor DNA. I want nothing to do with the stock market. I have other investments that I do, but that's because it's more in alignment with my goals, my risk tolerance, and things like that. Things that I have more control of. I'll give you an example. I really, really like private money lending right now on real estate. I'm able to leverage my life insurance policies. I borrow against them at 6 or 7%. I then lend them out at 13, 14% plus points, right? I'm making positive arbitrage just like a bank does when they pay us 1% for our savings account. They lend it out at 4 or whatever. Right? So I'm doing that over and over and over and over and over again. And that's something that I have a lot of control over. It's very low risk when you know what you're doing because the investment is secured by a hard asset, which is the property that's being worked on. And it's completely passive, right? So I'm putting my money to work in multiple different places at once, and it's all passive, right? So that works for me. Not going to work for everybody. And my long-term investing is Bitcoin. I have a little bit of other cryptocurrencies as well, but Bitcoin to me just makes so much more sense than the stock market. Now, when people hear that, they might think I'm crazy. And even after doing their research, maybe people don't want anything to do with Bitcoin. They want to do traditional stock market investment. That is totally fine. All right. But the point is to have a plan, understand what your goals are, where you're at financially, what are you trying to accomplish, and then finding the best vehicles to reach those goals in the most efficient and time efficient way possible, right? In the least amount of time possible, not waiting until you're 65, 70 years old, hoping that the stock market's going to do what your financial advisor told you it's going to do. Unfortunately, this 401k experiment is not working out for a lot of people. And I've interviewed the founder of the 401k, Ted Benna, on my channel, and even he's not a fan of the 401k anymore, to the point where he's actually created a new plan. It's the 401a plan. He calls it Radish, right? So he's like restarting the process all over again because of this monstrosity that the 401k has turned into. And people are reaching retirement age with a couple $100,000 in their 401k. It's like, how are you going to survive on that? And unfortunately, by the time you realize there's a problem, it's too late. Yeah, at 65, 70 years old, you realize you don't have enough money for retirement. The market didn't do what you thought it was going to do. Or how about this? It did, but you didn't pay attention to all the fees and everything that's being taken out of your portfolio every single year, regardless of whether the market goes up or down. Not to mention now you have massive tax bill as well. That tax bill comes due at 72 and a half now or whatever, right? So all these things start to hit you all at once. And if you didn't have a plan in place and you're just following what mainstream media tells you to do and what your financial advisor tells you to do, and that's just what everybody does. They max out, or most people don't even max out their 401k. It's like, well, you're not really setting yourself up for success. You're more burying your head in the sand and crossing your fingers. And it's a hope and a prayer on your financial future. And I don't like that at all. I think people would be far better served if they were to just educate themselves a little bit more about building wealth. You don't have to become this financial expert or anything. But guys, we got one shot on this planet. Money is a very important part of living the life that we want to live. We should probably study it a little bit and figure out the best ways to reach our goals. Is it just investing in the stock market? Maybe that's part of it, right? Like I said, nothing necessarily wrong with it, but just dumping your money in mutual funds and your 401k and thinking that's going to do it. Oh man, I got a bridge to sell you over in Brooklyn. All right. Cause it's just not working out for a lot of people. And here's the other problem, Jeff, is that we're taught to put the cart before the horse here, where people are investing when they shouldn't be. Like, again, it's a good step in the right direction. If you start investing, I don't know, $200-300 a month into a 401k, that can feel really good. But here's the question: is that $200 or $300 a month really going to move the needle? I mean, you're moving somewhat in the right direction, but that's not oftentimes not enough to make a big enough difference when you actually hit retirement. It's the number one reason why people don't have enough money in their 401k when they reach retirement age. It's not that the market didn't perform. It's that they weren't able to contribute enough to really make a difference and really take advantage of the returns that the market's done over the last 10, 20 years. So we're putting the cart before the horse by investing first when we don't even have enough income to really make a difference in the first place. So this is what I talk about a lot in my Millennial Wealth Creator Blueprint: is focus on the income first, and always, you should always be increasing income and cash flow. We build our vault, but our income is continuing to increase always. That way, instead of investing $200-300 a month into your 401k, how about you invest that back into yourself first, learn how to double your income, so then you can put $2,000 a month into your 401k. Now we're talking. Now we're making some real progress here when it comes to investing. But if you don't have if you're not contributing enough to these investments, I mean, obviously it's better than nothing. But just to assume that a mutual fund is going to do 12% on average every single year, like Dave Ramsey says, oh man, you're really rolling the dice, right? You got to be really careful. And what I would wrap up with is on this baby step is the post that I did earlier, because there's a lot of turmoil, a lot of volatility in the market right now. And I'm seeing all these influencers and people are just like freaking out. They're calling for like it's the next Great Depression and all this stuff. And it's just like it's just so blown out of proportion. It's just insane. And it's because fear and panic sells, right? That's how they control people. It's how they get people to, invest in these ridiculous things that serve Wall Street way more than it serves us. But I thought to myself, it was just kind of bizarre, because if we're so confident in the stock market to build wealth for us, why on earth would we not be excited as hell when the stock market goes down? Because now we can buy it for cheap. We can buy it cheaper now than it's like the S&P's down like 10 or 12% off its highs at the time of this recording. I think the Russell 2000 is down like 21%. NASDAQ maybe 50. Like, stuff is on sale. So like, if you did things in the right order, you worked on your income, you got your opportunity fund in place, we could start to deploy some of that opportunity money into like extra money into the market now, because stuff is on sale. This is good, right? Anytime an asset that you truly believe is going to appreciate in value over the long run, when that thing goes on sale, you want to load up. I do this. I don't invest in the market. I invest in Bitcoin. That's my thing. It's a whole other video. But I love when Bitcoin crashes. I love it. I'm just waiting on the sideline constantly. Anytime it's down 5-10%, whoop, I scoop up more. Whoop, scoop up more. Right? But it's because I've done my research. I have a long-term plan. I'm not worried about volatility, right? Because it's not such a large portion of my portfolio. I don't have so much exposure to it that it has a significant negative impact on my lifestyle. I'm focused on increasing income, continuing to build my vault, I'm doing my private money lending. Whatever Bitcoin does, I don't give a crap, because I'm worried about that 20, 30 years down the road. So I'm just going to stack it every single time it comes down. But it made me think today when I was just seeing all this really that this content is just blown out of proportion. It's like there's obviously in my opinion, a massive opportunity for people to reevaluate what they're doing with their money. Because if you're freaking out about the market right now, you've either got too much exposure, you have a plan but don't believe in it, all right, or you just don't have a plan at all and you see everybody else freaking out, so you have to freak out. It's like you need to do your own research, come up with your own plan based on your investor DNA, make sure you have your income in place, you've stacked your vault, your savings, everything like that, and you're just in the long run. You're letting the market do its thing over the long run, right? And you should get excited when it gets on sale, because you're getting it cheaper now. And if you're not doing that, something's wrong. So there's something underlying beneath that needs to be worked on. And the other point that I made in the post is like another, I guess, segment of the population that might be freaking out is like, if you're in retirement and this is happening, this is a really big problem, right? If you're in the accumulation phase of your financial journey right now, not really an issue. We should get excited. But if you're in retirement and you're going through this right now, this poses the biggest risk to your retirement. This kind of stuff, if you have not made the right moves. You mentioned earlier, Jeff, about the volatility buffer. This is where a volatility buffer is a retirement lifesaver, because the market is down 10, 15% in the first few months of the year. If you're taking withdrawals, distributions from your portfolio during that, you are like cutting your retirement in half, the longevity of your retirement of that portfolio in half, because you are compounding that loss and making it worse. Right. So, but then I pose the question too, is like, if you're relying on the stock market for income, why are you doing that? Because the stock market is an accumulation vehicle, not a distribution vehicle. It's not a great income vehicle. Right. And I mentioned this in the post. You know what it is? And we've had many conversations about this. Annuities. It's like the best income vehicle on planet Earth. If you accumulated wealth in the market, reached retirement, you transferred a portion of that to create the income that you need from the annuity, you don't give a crap what's happening in the market right now, because you're guaranteed that income for life. So I'll put a pretty bow on this with regards to step 4. Okay. Everything I just said is why it's so important to start doing your own research. Stop following gurus off the cliff. Okay. Like listening to every single little thing they say. You need to start listening to multiple different sources, doing your own research, learning how these different vehicles work and how they fit into your own plan, and taking a more holistic approach to your financial plan, so that you can put the right pieces in place, so that when there is a stock market crash like there is right now, you don't give a crap. It doesn't impact you at all, other than to maybe provide you additional opportunity. Right? That's the camp, at least in my opinion, that you should be in, because we don't need to stress about this stuff. It's not bad that the market's coming down unless you're not prepared for it, unless you're overexposed and you haven't moved into the right things. Right? So baby step number 4. All right, you can get started with investing, but don't blindly follow what mainstream financial media and gurus and influencers tell you. Do your own research and find what's going to work best for your specific goals and plans. I'll wrap up with that.
Yeah, phenomenal stuff, man. I mean, I think, one of the big things that I've done recently with a few different clients, as you're talking about retirement, is a lot of people, they've been so indoctrinated with just shovel all the money into your investments, and you're supposed to get this $1 million target. It's kind of like this thing that, Dave Ramsey talks about, millionaires all the time. He's got these studies that, millionaire this, millionaire that, get to be this millionaire. But like a lot of people don't have like a tangible understanding or reality of like, what is that doing for me? And is it going to really get me where I want to go? I mean, the last couple client calls I've had this week, anybody that's talking retirement, especially the people last night that I've already referenced, a couple, I said, how much money do you already have set aside? How much money do you need in retirement? They have no idea. Like, they kind of know generally how much they've got put away. They've got they've done very well, but they have no concept of, I've got this huge pile of money, but how does it convert into income, and how is it going to actually like show up in my life once I'm retired? They have no idea about that. And that's one of the huge gaps that we see. I mean, we talked about it in other videos. David McKnight wrote The Guru Gap back in December and published it, talking about some of these things where there's kind of these gaps and almost these huge craters in understanding that people are listening to some of this advice, but then there's things missing that people have no concept of what to do. And that's where we have to come in and fill those gaps through education, working one-on-one with clients, because a lot of people think, well, if I've got enough money, then I should be good in retirement, but they don't know how to do the math backwards to say, well, how much do you want in retirement? If you want 100,000 per year in retirement, because that's what you've been used to, or you want to, increase your living and lifestyle, enjoy the jet skis and enjoy some travel, how much do you need? Well, that's $4 million right there. Do you need? Am I doing the math right? Maybe not even quite that much, but you need 4%.
It's a lot
to get back to that. So you need, I guess it'd be 2.5 million you need. So, I mean, that's a lot that you would need. And a lot of people don't know how to calculate that. So some people, they're way off, and some people you have to have kind of a really tough conversation with, like, hey, you don't have enough set aside. Like, what you've put aside isn't going to produce enough income for you, at least predictably. And then other people, they're actually in a better spot than they think. And then for those people, it can be a challenge of getting them to actually spend money, because they spent 30 or 40 years scrimping and saving and sacrificing and delaying, and they're never living. And you spoke to this when you first started talking about the investment, is looking at your lifestyle, and are you wanting to wait to the end? And it made me think of, Garrett talks about buying your net worth and investing in your cash flow. And you're talking about, work on your income first. That can be the very first thing that you need to really up, so that when you are putting money towards an investment like Dave talks about, it's getting you somewhere noticeably, and you're not relying on the returns to get you there solely. It's partly because of the contributions you're making, plus the rates of return. Because if the rates of return aren't always there, or the timing isn't quite right, you want to still have enough that you've been able to put away to make up for that. And so those are just a couple thoughts that off the top of my head. It also made me think of, we were on a training earlier with Tyler from Life 180, and he was talking about a client that he recently had that retired at age 70. They decided to work longer, and they died of, I think, a heart attack at age 72. They had 2 years of retirement, and it's like, I know for me, and a lot of people listening to this would probably say, you know what, I'm okay with cutting back in some areas, but I want to enjoy my life. And if that means spending a little bit more money now to enjoy it, because there's no guarantee that I'll be here well into the future. There's absolutely no guarantees. And, I've spoken of this in other videos. My dad passed a little over a year ago, and, there's a lot of things I wish I would have done differently in the past, but I can only move forward with those new insights of like, you know what, I'm going to live more today, instead of thinking and having that future thinking of, I'm going to do this when, or I'm going to, be able to spend more time with my family when I'm at this certain point. You do that now, you fit it into your here and now, and make sure that you're living life to the fullest now. But there's got to obviously be a balance of preparing for the future and living in the here and now. And I think that balance is different for everybody. And that's part of what we help clients with when we're doing calls, is getting to know the person and where are they in some of those things, so that they're doing what they feel is best for them to get them the results that they want. And you're just not guaranteed, anything in the future. And I think what we've talked about so far of Dave's steps, there's a lot of synergy that can happen between these steps, because when you've saved up enough money, and I know Garrett talks about this in some of his books, I think 5-Day Weekend is one of them. He really goes into it in depth. Is once you've got your kind of your habit of saving down, where every single month there's an excess and you're able to put more and more money away, and you spoke to it a little bit of not just immediately putting it right in the market, but building up some cash reserves for a period of time, and then being able to make more like lump sums, maybe quarterly or semi-annual, something like that, into various places, or waiting for those opportunities in the market. Because I've done a little bit of retail trading. I've got a lot of people in my sphere that are very successful at retail trading, and there's certain trends that the market has. And now most people, if they're trying to trend and time the market, that's a recipe for disaster. But if you can spend some time learning that, then when you know that Bitcoin went down a little bit, and you know that it's a pullback to go higher, you can get in at the pullback and ride it up for a little while. And so if you can, again, increase your education, increase your knowledge, you can be in a better position by having the emergency and opportunity fund to execute, even if you're still playing the stock market, to get in at a better time, waiting for those opportunities, waiting for the bad headlines like we saw today, and then going, this is a key time that I can maybe put my position in to be further ahead in the next, how many ever months or years, wherever your time frame is you're playing. Those are the types of things that doing these things that Dave teaches, and they're similar to what we teach, obviously, as well, of getting that foundation straight, having the capital to deploy, and then being at the right place at the right time when an opportunity strikes, for you can pull the trigger. Because when you can pull the trigger, then you can capitalize usually on those things. So I think those are.
Yeah, a couple things on that. I think this is really important, because this is where a lot of people get stuck. And I'll start with one of the ways that it was explained to me with regards to reaching retirement, and like, what the clients you're talking to right now. I mean, they're a perfect example of this, where we're taught how to play offense our entire lives, and then we're just expected to switch over to defense immediately, right? So like the analogy I use is football. You take football, for example, right? You take the offensive line. I mean, you're talking about some of the most, physically talented people in sports. Okay. If you take the offensive line, and then all of a sudden they might do great on offense, but if you switch them over to the defensive line, it's going to be a disaster, right? Because it's a completely different game. Well, accumulation versus distribution in personal finance is the exact same thing. There are far different strategies for wealth accumulation than there is for income distribution. There are far better vehicles for like financial vehicles for accumulating wealth versus distributing that wealth. But if you've never learned that, well, you're going to be in that position where you're scrimping and saving until you're 65, 70 years old. And then you're going to be like, well, what the heck do I do now? Right. So we need to start planning for this stuff ahead of time. And that comes down to educating yourself. And one other point that I wanted to address, because I think this is really important. It's really sad to hear stories like you said, where that Tyler shared, where the gentleman retired at 70, he passed away at 72. You know, it's just, that's really, really sad. And I would obviously hope that, you know, he had some good life experiences along the way. But here's the thing is, you know, where we're taught like this accumulation theory, where we're taught to accumulate as much as we possibly can, scrimp and save, sacrifice. And then sometimes you do need to do that. Like you said, there needs to be a balance, right? We don't need to be blowing all of our money just because it could potentially end tomorrow, right? We need to be responsible. However, once you understand how these different vehicles work and you start to become more efficient with where you put your money and what you do with it, all of a sudden we're able to have our cake and eat it too, right? So a perfect example of this, I had a conversation with a lady a few months ago about potentially setting up a policy. And she said one of the things that that her and her family is struggling with is that they like to go on family trips, right? So she said that we're probably behind on our savings, but you know, it's because we like to live. We like to create these family experiences and stuff like that. And I'm not going to argue against that, right? That's great, right? That's why we make money to make these memories and have these experiences, but you also need to save. So I asked her, well, what if you could do both? Did you know you could do that? She's like, what are you talking about? And that's where I started educating her about how dividend paying whole life insurance works, which Dave Ramsey hates. A lot of these, you know, mainstream financial gurus just hate whole life insurance because they don't understand it, just like everybody, like so many other people. When you understand it, you realize, holy smokes, I can do both. Like if I take the money that I was going to use for my family trip and I put that into my whole life insurance policy first, okay, now I have a foundational asset that's going to grow for the rest of my life. It's forcing me to save. It's kind of like a very efficient forced savings vehicle. But the thing is if I want to use that policy to go on a family vacation, I can do that without interrupting the growth of that money. So I'm saving for my retirement. I'm building wealth while I'm also creating the family experience or having the family experience, going on that family trip. I don't have to sacrifice that in order to build wealth for the long term. I can do both because I understand how this particular vehicle works. Now, I'm not a huge fan of using policy loans for stuff like that. However, if you're going to do it, goes back to what I asked earlier, why not do it in the most efficient way possible, right? So you can have these experiences if you start to make more strategic moves with your money, putting it in the right places. We don't have to sacrifice nearly as much. We can live along the way. We don't have to wait till 65, 70 years old to start living our life. And we certainly don't have to wait till 65, 70 years old to have $1 million. Like that's like the magical number that everybody wants to get to in their 401k. Screw that noise, man. Why not learn how to make $1 million now so you can enjoy it now, like, and not have to wait till 65, 70 years old. Now, and you don't have to make $1 million. I'm not saying that. I'm saying stop relying on these financial vehicles to build wealth for you. Recognize that you are your greatest asset. Educate yourself. Become more efficient where you're putting your money. Make sure that you're increasing income and cash flow. You don't have to be making $1 million a year, but let's reach that goal a lot sooner and not hope and pray that the market is going to do it for us. The market should be part of the portfolio potentially, right? But that's not where we should be relying. Like we should be solely relying on the market or really any financial vehicle to do it for us, right? We build wealth. We deploy the capital and income that we create into these different vehicles. We are responsible for the end result. So if we can find more efficient ways to reach our goals, why on earth would we not do that, right? So that would be my final thoughts on step 4.
Yeah, good stuff, man.
What's up, my fellow wealth creator? Thank you so much for checking out this clip from the Millennial Wealth Creator podcast. If you'd like to watch the full podcast, there will be a link down below in the description. Make sure to also check out the additional tools, training, resources that I have in the description as well, just to help you along your journey. Thanks again for checking out the clip, and we'll see you in the next one.